What is everybody? Welcome back to another version of the Optimal presented by FTN Daily. Back again with some more NBA plays for today's March 23rd slate. I think we have 11 or 12 games. There is a full slate of games here for us today after just 4 games last night. So good to get that normal set of games back in our lives here. But we're here on Wednesday. We do have some golf going on right now. So hopefully you guys saw the golf content last night. We have a pretty fun event with the match play stuff. So hopefully you're enjoying that. But we're talking NBA here. And there's a ton of injury news for today's slate. I'm sure there'll be more to come. We're kind of reaching that end of season NBA point where we're going to get lots of news and lots of stuff going around. So make sure you're staying up to date. It is tough to be competitive in the DFS scene when you're not able to stay active with these injury updates. So make sure you're on top of that stuff. And again, it's 2 o'clock now when I'm recording this, a little bit before 2. So we already have a good amount of news. So it's actually pretty strange that we have this much news already, but a lot of times we're going to get that news backloaded a bit. But let's hop into the optimizer now. We're going to do the same thing that we did last time. We're going to go tier by tier, giving you my top plays of the day. We're going to talk about the headline game, which is Memphis and Brooklyn, and then we're going to give out some prize picks towards the end of the show. So top tier. So this is going to be the 9K and above range here. Like I mentioned last show, we're going to break it into 3 tiers. The 9K and above is what I'm going to classify as the top tier. Now we have a couple of really good options here, but also it's kind of I don't want to say a weak slate by any means up top because it's not, but it is one where we don't have Luka because he's out tonight. No Jokic on the slate, no Giannis. So we're not as top heavy with those elite stars on the board. But we do have Shai Gilgeous-Alexander rating out as the top player in this tier. A couple of reasons here. Obviously, his usage and his permanent production has been fantastic over the course of the past 2 months, dating back to January 1st, with guys like Josh Giddey, Lou Dort off the floor. So those numbers look fantastic. Also, a very good matchup here against the Orlando Magic, who really just struggle entirely on the defensive side of the ball, but primarily against guards. And even in a tough matchup, I think SGA would be just in a good spot in general because he's back below that 10K price tag and with all the usage that he has been garnering with these players out. But number 2 is Joel Embiid. Now, Embiid rates out as the second best in terms of the player rater today, but I think there are a couple of reasons as to why you might not find yourself on him. He is the top overall projected play of the board, but he's also the second most expensive player on the slate today behind LeBron. And on his same team, you have James Harden, who I also think is a very good option at 1,100 cheaper. So while Joel Embiid is the second best graded player in this tier, I don't know if he's going to be the player that I use in my lineups the second most, just because of the fact that I think it's easier to get to some other guys, and you have James Harden in that spot, that glorious spot, guards against the Lakers, who we've seen just crush all year long. We looked at Darius Garland's matchup, I think 2 days ago against this Lakers team. He had 4 traits in our ADVP tool, and the Lakers were bottom 3 in all of those numbers. So it is going to continue to be a very good spot here for James Harden and other guards against the Lakers. Let's just go and check out the ADVP tool while we're at it. So we're going to say James Harden against the Lakers. So here we go. He has 5 traits here, and the Lakers are bottom 8 in all of those traits. 30th against dimers, 25th against primary ball handlers, 22nd against scorers, 30th against crafty finishers, and 30th against superstars. So fantastic matchup for Harden here. Just to kind of compare, I'm sure it's likewise a fine matchup for Embiid as well. So there's really one area where the Lakers are tough defensively, and that's against rebounders. But the rest, I don't think Embiid's going to have any trouble. But just the fact that you have that option to use Harden at $1,100 cheaper, I think makes it a little bit more difficult to get a ton of Embiid, although he is going to be popular. He is the best center option on the board, in my opinion. So no issue with that. I think I'll just have a little bit less than kind of what I typically would because of the other options. But Devin Booker is the last guy I'm going to touch on in this range. You can pretty much make a case for everybody that you see on the screen now, but Devin Booker is going to be the last guy I make a case for. It's kind of similar to SGA. You take some of these guys that are off the floor for the Suns over the past 2 months or so, and you look at Chris Paul off the floor, Cam Johnson off the floor. Devin Booker has really solid numbers. Minnesota's defense has been pretty solid so far this season, but they are playing very fast, which is a good spot here for the Suns. The Suns also play pretty fast. They're 8th in pace so far this season. Minnesota is 1st. So it's going to be a very fast-paced game. Should be pretty good defensively as well, but the pace should allow for some extra possessions and allow this to be a very good fantasy environment here for the Suns. But that'll be it for the top tier. Those are the top 4 plays between Embiid and Harden, and then SGA and Booker. So let's talk about the mid tier now. So mid tier also a pretty solid tier here and pretty solid range today. Like I mentioned, a lot of injuries. You can see the 2 guys up at the top: Spencer Dinwiddie, Jalen Brunson. There's no Luka tonight, so those 2 guys are going to be, pushing to more minutes, more usage, pretty much more everything, in a fantastic spot against Houston. They're probably the 2 best plays, probably 2 of the best plays on the slate, let alone in this range. I guess the issue would be if you wanted to play both of them together. I have no issue with it. I think that they're both cheap enough. I think it's totally fine. If you wanted to go for a little bit more of a contrarian route, I think using just one of these guys is a fine way to do so. Maybe hope that one of them has the ceiling game while the other one kind of falls back because of that. But right below those guys in terms of the player raters, RJ Barrett. I love RJ Barrett tonight. He is going to be a little bit more popular than I kind of hoped for, but can't really blame the field for it. He's been fantastic all season long, and especially as of late. And now with the fact that you're going to be seeing no Julius Randle here, who's going to be out once again. He's listed doubtful, so I guess some things could potentially change, but I'm anticipating him being out. Great matchup against the fast-paced and poor defensive Charlotte team. So I really like this spot here for Barrett. He had 30 points in last night's game. He did play a ton of minutes last night, so maybe you could be a little bit worried about that on the second half of a back-to-back. Not me. I'm not concerned about it at all. They've been front loading this RJ Barrett with his minutes all season long. They've been, no holds barred at all. They're giving him tons of minutes night in and night out. I have him projected for almost 40 on the night. So RJ Barrett's a guy that I like quite a bit. Next guy, and then the final guy in this range, Bogdan Bogdanovic. I like him quite a bit. He's 6,800, and I think that he's going to be going a bit overlooked because he's just a little bit expensive compared to some of these other guys. You have Jalen Brunson and Spencer Dinwiddie in that range, and I think that Bogdanovic could serve as a really strong pivot if you're looking to get off of one of those guys. Again, I don't recommend fading both of these guys, but if you wanted to be a little bit contrarian, maybe just play one of them. Bogdanovic could serve as a really strong pivot. Good matchup here against the Pistons. No John Collins, no Danilo Gallinari, no Lou Williams for the Hawks. I think it's a great spot for Bogdanovic. But let's talk about these value options now here on today's slate. So we're going to be looking at the 5'9" and below. And again, I mentioned this on the last show, and I'll reiterate again, but I guess you can kind of break it up into a couple different groups in the value tier, right? There's value plays who are, the 5K guys, the 4 to 5K guys, and then there's the punt plays that are typically sub 4K. So I will say that there's a little bit of a difference here, but today we have a ton of value. Pretty much everyone that you can see on the screen right now is in play as a value option. So that leads me to 2 points. One is you can argue that chalk down here probably doesn't feel great because of the fact that there are other options that I think are all in play. But there are a couple of guys that do stand out above the rest in terms of their point per dollar numbers. First is Obi Toppin, same matchup that we just talked about for RJ Barrett, and same scenario, no Julius Randle. We saw it last night where Obi Toppin had a pretty solid game. It was actually, one that you probably were a little bit disappointed in. He only played 23 minutes. I don't know if we're going to get a ton more on a nightly basis with this current scenario, but I would say that 23 does seem a bit low. But again, he did produce about a fantasy point per minute in those 23 minutes. So if Obi Toppin is going to continue to be that strong per minute producer that we've kind of seen him in small samples, that I think is a very strong play here. Damian Jones is down there at the bottom as well as a solid play. Obviously, Kings dealing with a ton of injuries. Rashawn Holmes is out for the year due to personal reasons. No De'Aaron Fox in this one. No Domantas Sabonis as well. So it's a pretty wide open team here in terms of what we're going to see from the rotation. Now, it is a little bit of a question mark for Damian Jones because, again, it's about 2 p.m. when we're recording this. I don't know who's going to start. Last game, we did see Damian Jones play 22 minutes, and Alex Len hasn't played a minute since March 9th. But if you throw it back to earlier on in the season when we had similar scenarios with Rashawn Holmes out, and this was before the Sabonis trade, we saw times where Alex Len was getting the start. We saw times where we even saw Chimezie Metu get the start. So I would highly recommend following up on this starting lineup and just kind of being sure who we're going to see starting here. Now, I think 2 of these guys are going to get minutes regardless, and right now I have them going to Metu and Damian Jones. But now if, let's say, Alex Len pops into the starting lineup, that's obviously going to change the things quite a bit. So make sure you're checking back on the projections and on the starting lineup here. Next play is Tyus Jones down here at 4,600. No John Morant. We'll get into that scenario in a little bit here when we talk about the headline game. But Tyus Jones went so far this season when we see him get the opportunity with no John Morant. First of all, we see him pretty much had the keys to the offense, and the minutes have always been pretty solid when he gets the chance to get that time. So Tyus Jones makes a ton of sense here. And what I think is going to be a pretty interesting game, it is the highest game total. The over-under game total is at the highest amongst anybody on the slate, and both teams are inside the top 10 in terms of pace. So it should be a pretty upbeat game here for Tyus Jones. So I think he's overall in a very good spot as well. But I do want to mention pretty much anyone you see on the screen now: Jonathan Kuminga, Davion Mitchell, Dylan Brooks, like all these guys, pretty much everyone on this screen right now is in play as a value option. So I wouldn't limit yourself to just the chalk guys. Although I think the chalk guys are in very good spots. I think Davion Mitchell is going to play a ton of minutes, and at 5.2, I think he projects as a really strong value. But again, like Dylan Brooks there at a very similar price, like there's a lot of pivots here. So again, me personally, I'm going to be looking to eat some of the chalk, but not be afraid to be contrarian with some of these value options as well, because there is a ton of them. But let's head over and talk about the headline game here between Memphis and the Nets. So like I mentioned here, this is the highest total game, and we do have no John Morant. So that is going to change a lot of things for the Grizzlies. And in this game being a road game, we're going to get Kyrie Irving back for this one as well. But let's talk about the splits here with no John Morant. So far this season, when you take Morant off the floor, a couple of key names. Dylan Brooks, his usage rate goes up to almost 30%, and he's well over 1 fantasy point per minute, almost at 1.1. Like I mentioned, he could be a very strong play here, especially if he's going to be low owned, which I do think he will be, considering some of the other guys. And by low owned, I mean like sub 20%. I don't think he'll be like 5% or anything like that, but I think he'll be lower owned than some of the other guys that we've talked about already. Jaren Jackson, he's up near 31% usage rate and a 1.3 fantasy point per minute. Tyus Jones, 18% usage, right around 1 fantasy point per minute. Desmond Baines, just shy of 25% usage, 1.13 fantasy points per minute. So lots of really good spots here for the Grizzlies with some of these guys off the floor. In terms of the Nets, it's a pretty good spot for them as well. It should be a good pace-up spot for the Nets, or in a really good environment. I have both Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving projected for over 32 actual points tonight. So if you're looking to get into the prop market or over on PrizePicks at all, those guys do stand out quite a bit. But yeah, that's kind of the headline game of the night, considering the big injury news of John Morant and the highest game total on the slate. So this is kind of what the projections are looking at now. But let's talk about some PrizePicks plays here. So obviously, PrizePicks has been a really fun thing to do all year long, and we have the PrizePicks Edge tool that I'll pull up right now. You can head over to FTN Daily and check that out. My 3 top plays of the day are Andre Drummond over 1.5 assists. We actually took this line the other day, and he ended up not playing. So obviously we couldn't see if he was going to get there or not. But same kind of logic, same reasoning behind all of that is why we like Andre Drummond on the over 1.5 assist market again. And now that it's going to be the highest overall game total, fast-paced game, I think it only helps Andre Drummond here. Now the next 2 plays are both Dallas guards with the assist props. I'm not going to take both of those guys. I'll let you guys decide which one you prefer. I prefer Spencer Dinwiddie. I think he's going to have slightly higher usage. I have no problem using both of these guys in the same pick, but again, let's say Dinwiddie goes for 9 or 10 assists. I could potentially see Brunson struggling to get there in terms of his assist number. So I don't know if they correlate all that great. So I probably avoid putting them in the same pick or the same card over on PrizePicks. But my third play is going to be a little bit of an under the radar one. It's going to be Trendon Watford over 2.5 assists. This guy's usage has been phenomenal over the past couple of weeks with the host of Trailblazers out, and now you add Josh Hart to the sideline as well. Anthony Simons is out, Yusuf Nurkic is out, and then obviously no CJ McCollum, who's been traded away, and no Damian Lillard as well. So it's basically just to be fair, a G League type team here for Portland, and Trendon Watford has been taking total advantage of it. He's now played 30 plus minutes in 6 straight games, and 29 plus minutes in every single game all the way dating back to March 2nd. So tons of minutes available for Watford. He's had 3 or more assists in 3 of his last 4 games, and in 5 of his last 8 games. So tons of production from Watford on the assist category, but the usage rate has been very strong for him. So I'm going to take the over at 2.5 assists. I think he gets big minutes. I think it's a decent matchup where he can actually utilize some of his speed that he does actually have as a big man. in his favor in the matchup against Jakob Poeltl. So yeah, Trendon Watford over 2.5 assists is a number that I like. A little bit of a sneaky number there, but that's going to do it for me today. Appreciate you all for tuning in, and we'll be back tomorrow with some more NBA stuff. And we're getting ready for MLB season as well. So hopefully you guys are on board with the MLB product. Looking forward to MLB. It's one of my favorite sports, if not my favorite sport to play in terms of DFS and betting. Absolutely love it. So highly recommend getting in on that early bird package now. We will see you guys next time. Until then, good luck, everybody.